he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mario Mantis 100 back again with another episode of the How's My Team series. So let's see what the week brings. So first we're going to talk about the biggest disappointment of the weekend and probably the biggest one of the season so far. The Titans went down again in North Queensland. 50 points to 18 to the Cowboys. I'm pissed off and disappointed. They were leading 18 points to 12 at halftime, and it was a shutout in the second half. 7-0 for the Cowboys. Now, ultimately, I will say that they did have 2 sin bins during the second half, or at least the end of the first half, and during the middle of the second half, we had pretty much the majority of the sin bin times, which didn't help things. But yeah, we're leading 18 points to 12, scored 3 tries in the space of about 7 minutes, but the effort was not there in the second half, especially. Towards the end of the first half as well, because I think we were leading like 16 points to 6, I think at one stage during the game, early on in the first half, and they scored 2 tries in the space of about 10 minutes. And yeah, actually, was it 10 minutes? Have a look. So yeah, so they scored first, so it was 6 points to 0. Then Jojo scored, Brian Kelly scored, and Bo Firma scored. So yeah, it was 16 points to 6, and it was 18 points to 6, getting towards the end of the 30th minute, after there was a professional foul. So they actually had a sin bin of their own within the last 10 minutes of the first half. So it put us up 18 points to 6. Then they scored a try about 5 minutes later. And yeah, from there, it just turned into an absolute mess. And yeah, I'm severely disappointed. I'm pissed off with the result because I know that obviously even from the first half, this team can play better than they did. And they have 50 points scored against them, which again in history, as I've said before, I think I might have said it in the first couple of episodes, no team has won the competition from having 50 points scored against them during a season. So, yeah, not an ideal spot. And with that result, it actually puts us in the bottom 4 of the competition in 14th position, because the Roosters did get up on Anzac Day on Friday. So that made us drop down to 14th. We're lucky we're not 15th, because obviously the Knights have not been playing well at all. But we're not that far behind it, because it's 6 points difference in the points difference between us and the Knights at the moment. I think the Eels are still going to play, and the Panthers are at the bottom of the table. So yes, the Cowboys do move up to 6th, and we got the Bulldogs in Magic Round next week. I know that they are a depleted side, but they did lose this week and lost their undefeated streak to the Broncos on Thursday night. So I'm expecting another carve up and even with them depleted, we're going to have a few people that are obviously the two people that got sin binned are probably going to go to the judiciary and probably get suspended for a couple of weeks because it was high contact on both of them. And watching the replays, they're going to get at least a couple of weeks because they're really cracking down on high contact and high tackles this year, or especially the last few weeks, especially. And yeah, it's just a disappointing result. Should have probably seen it coming, not 50 points to 18. Thought maybe it might have been a little bit closer, but I think it just describes where we're at with this side at the moment. And I think that ultimately a lot of them are not playing great at all. Like, they're being very disappointing. Honestly, I feel like with some of the forwards, I think some of the forwards are going to get changed out. Lofi did come back this week, and I believe Fafita did come back this week as well. Let me have a look at the team list. Yeah, so Khan Pereira did come back, and he was nowhere to be seen, apparently, during the game. And David Fafita was on the bench this week as well. But yeah, I think that Des Hasler has got a tall task on his hands because we don't play until this Sunday next week against the Dogs, and obviously we're going to have a couple of forwards obviously missing time due to suspensions, but I think that ultimately with this team, I think there definitely needs to be some changes to it. I'm not sure if Kieran Foran will be back next week, as in for the Bulldogs game. I think he's taking it slow in terms of recovery. They're not trying to rush him back on the field, which is good, because that's the last thing that we want, is him to rush back, play, and then get injured again and be out for the rest of the season or close to. But definitely some things need to change, because you can't be dropping 50 points in a game in defense. And honestly, like I said, there's only a couple of teams that have done it this year. Eels have done it twice, and the Roosters have done it once. There's a few teams that have gotten pretty close. We were pretty close the last couple of weeks, especially with the Dragons and that, but now we've had 50 points scored against us as well, so we're probably not winning the comp. And I don't think even with this team, I think we'd be winning a comp anyway. But it's massively disappointing, and I'm very pissed off with it. And it kind of started the weekend on a sour note. And when we talk about the next team, we're going to be continuing that. So yeah, not a great Saturday. And then we move to more disappointment with the Giants. The Giants were in Canberra against the Bulldogs, and they lost by 32 points. And it was technically a home away from home in Canberra for the Giants. They have a sponsorship with Canberra, because Canberra obviously don't have a team. I don't know whether this plan initially was for us, a situation for Canberra to get a team in the AFL or something. I don't know. But yeah, they were leading at one stage. They were leading a few times in this game. At the end of the first quarter, they led by a goal, and they were behind by 5 points at half time. But the third quarter was where the Dogs exploded with points. They ended up kicking 5 goals, 3-1 behind. So we only scored 1 point in the entirety of the third quarter, and that's where we got stuck. We had a little bit of a flurry in the last quarter, but it was well too late by that time, and it was late in the fourth quarter as well. So could have lost by a hell of a lot more in terms of percentage. We were pretty far down in the table, but yeah, 32 points. Again, after the Titans game, I watched some of this game and they just looked out of sorts. And I don't know what it is against the Dogs and in Canberra, because they haven't played well against the Dogs recently. They've only won, I think what they said was 1 win from like the last 9 games or something like that against the Dogs. And in Canberra, which is a home away from home, they barely can play there. They haven't won a lot of games there either, which is really, really disappointing and a really weird situation. Like, in terms of distance travelled for both teams, it's about the same because obviously west of Sydney, we're not necessarily in Sydney, but we'll say, okay, we're in Sydney and around that region. You're travelling to Canberra, and the distance between Canberra and Sydney and Canberra and Melbourne is the same. That's literally what they did in terms of location for that particular city, is that they split the distance in half, and it's literally, I think the distance is actually equal on both ends. So it's equal distance from Sydney as it is from Melbourne. So you can't say it's travel, because yes, we were in Adelaide and then we travelled to Canberra. But I think the Dogs last week possibly could have been in Melbourne, so maybe a little bit of travel. But again, not having a quarter where you only scored 1 point. And that's literally like the second week in a row, because ultimately for most of the third quarter, I think last week, if not the second quarter, in the Adelaide game, we didn't really score that many points at all. I think we might have scored a couple of behinds. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 behinds. And that was it. In fact, actually, let me go back to that game, because I'm in the app. Where's the breakdown? So they scored 3 behinds in the first quarter. So I was wrong on what quarter it was, but yeah, 3 points in the first quarter. So honestly, they haven't been doing that great. And they got a big game this week coming up. They go up against Sydney this week, and with that result, we actually drop out of the bottom 4. We drop out of the top 4, and we drop down to 6th. And they actually, the Bulldogs actually jump into 7th with that result. So that actually hurts us a lot in terms of top 4 spot, because that's what we want. We want a top 4 spot at the end of the year. Yes, we did get that last year, and we went out in straight sets. But I think with this team, having the double chance to go to preliminary final, that's partially why you want to win enough games to get into the top 4, is to have that double chance. Whereas if you lose and you're outside in your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th in finals, you're out. You lose, you're out. Whereas if you're in the top 4, you have a chance that if you lose, you can work yourself back into a preliminary final or grand final. So, it is a double chance. They give you the chance to play again. But I don't know what they're doing at the moment. And it seems like Stringer's not firing on all cylinders the last couple of games. Jesse just come back. He kicked a couple of goals, I believe, in this game. So, he's slowly getting back. Where is he on the table? Yeah, 2 goals, 1. And obviously he was back from injury this week. So that kind of, I can't really blame him for, obviously. But Jake Stringer not scoring any goals, scoring a couple of behinds. That definitely doesn't help. And the team's movement, I think, between the arcs in terms of the 50-metre arcs is not where it should be. And I don't know, but the percentage that we had definitely took a hit the last couple of weeks with a couple of, I wouldn't say heavy losses, but they are sort of heavy, because obviously you lost by 32 this game, and you lost by 18 last game, but it could have been a hell of a lot more. And then, Hawthorn, you obviously lose that by 12 as well. So, some of the closer results in terms of Adelaide and Hawthorn, they're only a couple of goals in it, but 32 points is not a good result. So it was 113 to 81 from the Bulldogs winning over the Giants in Canberra. But staying with Saturday, not all of it was bad because the Wanderers did pick up a win against Newcastle. It was 1-0 in Newcastle at McDonald Jones Stadium. And with that, we secure finals. We secure finals for this season, which is fantastic. We've still got a game left to go. Obviously, next week we go up against MacArthur Bulls, who are actually out of finals contention because they did lose against Victory on Friday night on Anzac Day. So they are completely out of finals contention because they've only got one game to go, and they're going to get 4 points or more. Actually, no, they're going to get 5 points now. So they had to win against Victory to be any shot of making finals, and they haven't. So it was 1-0. It was 0-0 at halftime. I think they played a little bit scrappy. Obviously, Newcastle are just playing for pride right now, and they have been for the last couple of weeks. But they're not a bad side. Like, Newcastle have had some really good wins this year. They've got 8 wins and 5 draws this season, which compared to some of the other teams around them, you've got 9 and 6 for MacArthur, and they're only a position above them, so they're in front by 4 points because they've got a win and a draw over Newcastle. But you're looking under them, you've got the Central Coast Mariners. They've won 5 games and drawn 11. You've got Wellington underneath them, and it's 6 goals, 6 wins and 6 draws. And then you've got Brisbane and Perth on the bottom with 4 and 3 wins, respectively. But yeah, so ultimately we're still in third at the moment, in front of Victory by 1 point. We do have a shot next week to go into second if we win against MacArthur. The problem is that Melbourne City have got to, basically they've got to lose. Oh no, if they draw, actually it might not be a bad situation actually either. So yeah, so if they draw against Sydney FC next week on, what day is that? Is that Saturday? It's a Saturday. So if they draw on Saturday, we can move up to second with a win against MacArthur. So we're sitting at 43 points. Melbourne City is sitting at 45 points at the moment, with Melbourne Victory 1 point behind us, and then Western United behind them by another point. So they're behind. So they're actually the biggest droppers the last couple of weeks, because obviously when we talked about them a couple of weeks back, and we won against them, they were in second, and they've dropped to 5th now. But having a top 2 spot is decently important in terms of the finals, because you completely skip the elimination finals and go to the semis straight away. Obviously, Auckland FC have won the Premier's Plate because Melbourne City, obviously that are owned under the Manchester City banner, they drew yesterday against Adelaide United. So Adelaide United are hoping that Sydney FC lose next week to stay in, because they're a point in front of Sydney FC, but Sydney FC have got to lose their next 2 games, and one of them they play today against West United. So they're hoping that Sydney FC lose both games, because if Sydney FC draw, their goal difference is better than them. So they're in front by, they've got plus 12 on their goal difference, whereas Adelaide has got minus 2. So yeah, they're only a point in front. They're hoping that Sydney FC loses both games. Now, if Sydney FC can win next week, I don't care about this week, obviously. If Western United and Sydney FC draw, that's fine. If Sydney FC lose this week, that'd be fine as well. I wouldn't mind. But if they can win next week against Melbourne City, and actually, which game is first out of those two? So the Melbourne City game is before the Wanderers game next week. So the Melbourne City game is at 5, and the Wanderers game is at 25 minutes to 8 at night. So, and we're in Campbelltown, so we're in the west of Sydney and Campbelltown. So we'll know the result in terms of whether we're playing for second or playing for third by the time our game starts next week. But yeah, 1-0, not necessarily the best win ever, but it's secure finals, which is great. And we're still fighting for a top 2 spot, so that's even better. And hopefully, especially with the goal difference that we got, I think we've scored more. I think we actually scored the most goals in terms of the season so far. Yeah, we have by 2 goals at the moment. So we've scored 55 goals this season. The next team that is closest to us in that regard, in terms of goals for, is Adelaide with 53, and then Sydney with 52. Whereas Auckland FC, it's funny because they've only scored 46. So they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're 6th in terms of goals for. It's only just that they've only had 23 goals scored against them. So that's why the goal difference is decent. Obviously theirs is not the best right now in terms of goal difference because they've only got a plus 13. Melbourne City have got plus 12. Wanderers have got 16, I think. Yeah, 16. Western United have got 15. And I think Melbourne Victory have 8. Yeah, Melbourne Victory have got 8 as well. So literally there's a lot of teams. And then if you go back down to Sydney FC in 7th, they've got plus 12. So, a lot of the goal differences are actually, some of them are relatively high, but that's only because some of the teams at the bottom, like you're looking at Perth, they've scored 20 goals this season and had 55 scored against them. So that's minus 35, which is not what you want. Not what you want, honestly. But yeah, like I said, 1-0 win, secures finals for us, which is great. Just fighting for a top 2 spot with a win next week and a loss with Melbourne City next week. So we can secure a top 2 finish if we win and Melbourne City lose next week. But, the first step was securing finals. That was the first step, which we did with a 1-0 victory over the Newcastle Jets. And we can secure a top 2 spot if we win next week against Macarthur Bulls and Melbourne City lose to Sydney FC. And now it's Monday morning. I have an extra prop with me, my scarf, because Liverpool won 5-1 against Tottenham Hotspur at home to claim their 20th Premier League trophy. So obviously in the current format of the Premier League, it is only their second, but if we're including all the league titles from before it was called the Premier League, the franchise has 20. And it was an absolute drubbing to Tottenham Hotspur. Obviously, Tottenham actually scored first in the 12th minute, but Luis Diaz scored, McAllister scored, Gakpo scored, Salah, of course, couldn't be kept off the score sheet. He scored as well, and it was an own goal like 6 minutes after that. But obviously, Salah had a chance to score another. But yeah, this is my scarf. So it's my Liverpool scarf. Has the Liverpool logo on it, if you can see it. It has the Carlsberg branding on it. obviously one of our major sponsors, and obviously on the back, on the main part of it, says Liverpool FC, and it's the same on the other side as well. But yeah, so this is some scarf. I've had this for a couple of years now. I just haven't really worn it. But yeah, so we can't be beaten in terms of the Premier League. We are on top, and we cannot be beaten by Arsenal. Arsenal dropped too many points, and unfortunately for them, they will be in second again after a grueling season, and there's still quite a few games left to go in terms of the Premier League. But as it stands right now, we have a 15-point buffer, so we cannot be beaten with the amount of games that are left. I think it's only 4 games left to go, I believe, left in the Premier League season. So yeah, so that kind of sucks in general for Arsenal. Unfortunately, during the week, Ipswich Town was the last team that was announced to be relegated. So all the teams that were promoted to the Premier League last season, unfortunately, are all being relegated to the Championship next season. So they've only been up one season. It kind of sucks for Ipswich Town in particular, because obviously they just come up. It's been a long time between stints in the Premier League, and kind of sucks that just, especially for the fans, that they go up and then they have to go back down again. Leicester City obviously having huge news with Jamie Vardy leaving the club at the end of the season. So we don't know at this point where he's going yet, but kudos to him. Great player, arguably one of my favourite players in the Premier League. Well, yeah, just the Premier League in general. Obviously they can never take that 2016 Premier League trophy off of Leicester City, and he was a major part of that. The record of scoring in 11 games straight, that is something that's probably going to be a record that's going to last for a little while, I would imagine. But yeah, so obviously big news there. The FA Cup final is confirmed now that it's Manchester City. They won this morning against Nottingham Forest, and Crystal Palace won against Aston Villa to go to the FA Cup final in pursuit of their first ever FA Cup trophy, and I think their first ever silverware as well. So I'm obviously barracking for Crystal Palace in that game rather than Manchester City. Manchester City is probably going to win that game, I would imagine, but weirder things have happened in the FA Cup, as we've seen even with Liverpool going down in the quarterfinals. So not really too much of a surprise in terms of which teams have won, or at least Manchester City being there at the end. That kind of makes a little bit of sense, and obviously they're playing back at Wembley again. But kudos to Crystal Palace for making it against a gallant Aston Villa team who are now out of 2 leagues in general, with obviously the loss in the Champions League against PSG, which again, they played reasonably well against PSG. Obviously PSG beat Liverpool the series before to make it to the quarterfinals. But again, like I said, PSG, really, really great team. They go up against Arsenal. I believe they go up against Arsenal this week. So that's going to be an intense game, because Arsenal did beat Real Madrid, which I'm glad they did. And if they do beat PSG, they have a possibility that they could go up against Inter Milan or Barcelona. So they have a chance to get a Champions League trophy. So all is not lost for this season. at the moment. It's just that obviously they will not win the Premier League title because they don't have enough points. And they've dropped quite a few games. Obviously, even this week they dropped points as well. They dropped points in a draw, so that didn't help. Didn't help things. And again, thanks to Crystal Palace, because obviously they were the team that actually played Arsenal midweek and drew with them. So, things are looking up for Crystal Palace. So you never know what happens in the FA Cup final. And they don't play at Wembley very often, but we'll see what happens with them. But 20th league title for Liverpool. Cannot be any more happier. 5-1, absolute drubbing to Tottenham. Feel sorry for Tottenham fans because they've been going through a tough time. They're still obviously in the Europa League and closer to the Europa League final. But we'll see how we go with that. But 15-point lead, unassailable lead with the games that are left in the season. And for the 20th time, Liverpool are Kings of England. And that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. We've had some really, really good highs in terms of Wanderers making the finals and securing them. Obviously, they're in third now. Actually, no, they're in fourth now because Western United did beat Sydney FC. So, in talking about that, because obviously more results have come through, Sydney FC only have to draw against Melbourne City or lose to Melbourne City, and Adelaide, they only have to draw or win, and they will be in the top six and in for finals contention. If they lose against Manchester City, Melbourne City, if they lose to Melbourne City, Sydney FC, then Adelaide United will make it into the finals, the top six, and make it into finals because they have the bye this week coming. So, going to be interesting in terms of results there. If Melbourne City lose, then Western United, the Wanderers, or I think even Melbourne Victory can possibly still make top two at this point. But for the Wanderers, obviously on my front, I'm hoping that even if it's a draw with Melbourne City, a Melbourne City draw or loss, and hoping that Auckland FC do beat Western United, or even a draw will be fine with that game as well. And we win against MacArthur, we will be in second. So we will jump the fact that we have to play an elimination final against, say, probably Sydney FC, because that's one of the only results that kind of goes against us going into the top two, is that we'll jump in to second spot and skip the first week of finals, and we'll be in the semi-finals straight away. Whereas if we don't make it in second, most likely either in third or fourth, then we'll be playing an elimination final against whoever fifth or sixth will be, which at this point could be Adelaide United, could be Sydney FC, could be Melbourne Victory, could be Western United, it could be any one of those teams. It could even be Melbourne City at this point. So it could be any one of those teams. But yeah, so it's interesting in terms of that. Obviously, Liverpool winning their title as well, winning the Premier League title. But then obviously some lows in terms of the Giants losing by a heap, and obviously the Titans losing by a hell of a lot as well. So, crazy week. We'll see what happens next week, because it could be even crazier. So with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been my Manchester 100. You guys have a great day or night, and of course, take care.